Welcome to the Finance Story, and I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. We are a leading digital publication that celebrates life in finance. I have with me Gareth Meaker, who's the finance officer, who's the finance officer of the World Food Program. He's a CA from the 2013 batch and a CFA from the 2016 batch. He has in the past worked with PwC and HP. He's a graduate of the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. He's also a sports buff. We're going to talk about all that. Hi, Gareth. How are you?
Hi, Vishal. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, and I'm so glad we could do this. I'm really curious to know about yourself. You've done everything from sports to chartered accounting to obviously working in PwC all the way to the World Food Program. That's phenomenal. I want to start with your childhood. Talk about your early days, your early education, your mentors in the early days. Did parents have a major influence on you? Did you always want to be in life of finance?
Okay, no, thanks, Vishal. So I was born in Middelburg, which is more of a small mining town in Mpumalanga. It's pretty much exactly between Johannesburg and the border to Mozambique. But when I was quite small, we left there and we moved to Port Elizabeth. And from a very early stage, very much drawn to the numbers. I did accounting and really enjoyed maths. And then after high school, I started the Chartered Accounting journey with Nelson Mandela University, which has a very strong CA program. And so it was quite an easy decision for me to stay in PE and did the 4 years there, undergrad, and then the honors here. And then at the end of that, I felt quite keen for a change of scenery and moved across to Cape Town. I'd enjoyed my time in Port Elizabeth, but I think it was time for a bigger city. And so I made the move to PricewaterhouseCoopers in Cape Town to do my articles in financial services.
And was life very competitive when you were younger? And because everybody needs some kind of influence. Was your dad a numbers man? Was your mother a numbers lady? Is that how you got into finance? Or was it the teachers?
Well, probably a combination of both, because my mom is a teacher. If you have a mom as a teacher, she's going to keep a close eye on your scorecards and your report cards. So, but really, I think from a very young age, I had quite a high degree of discipline and self-drive. I don't recall ever my parents having to tell me, Gareth, you need to do your homework, you need to study harder. It was just very much something that came natural to me. I would set fairly clear goals, and I knew it would sort of take to work towards them, even from a very young age. But my dad is a numbers guy. He works in the financial services industry as well. He's got his own brokerage firm. And so I think that was quite a natural sort of introduction to that type of investment world. But
I remember you telling me that it was because also you had to pay for the education of sorts. At that point of time, was it college that you were preparing for, or was it CA that you were preparing for? What were you doing?
While I was in high school, I felt quite an eagerness to start working. I just wanted to get some work experience and try and earn some extra money. That was really the drive. And so in my final year of high school, I started my first job, which was, as you say, selling Hewlett-Packard laptops and printers in some retail stores in South Africa. And that was over weekends. And then through my first year of university, I wanted to add something more to it. And I mean, with sport being such a passion of mine, it just made sense for it to be something related to the fitness industry. And so I started working at Virgin Active gyms. And this was basically also on weekends. So on Saturdays and Sundays, we're quite full with these two jobs as a fitness consultant at the gym. And really, I think some of those work experiences from that point in time has really put me in good position in the future because of the soft skills you learn. And I had one other job while I was studying full time, which was probably the most fun one, if I'm honest. And that was to be a high performance driving instructor for Audi. So they would bring some of their new Audi, releases to the racetrack. And we would take some people around the racetrack and teach them emergency braking and swerving and which lines to take to do the fastest lap time and all these things. So that was, as a student, that was an absolute dream job.
This is wonderful. Gareth, I think you were built to handle pressure. I think you did driving, rowing. I think CA must be a cakewalk for you, right? Or was it different? How did you manage that? I
CA,
mean, when you
oh
chose
my
that
goodness.
route, who pushed you that route?
Mm,
Did you want to go take it? You could have continued to sport or remain in sales after your
mm.
obviously time at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. Okay.
Yes, it was very conscious. I did through high school, I did some of these aptitude tests where they can't establish what are your interests, what are your proclivities, what are you more inclined to, and so which career paths may be suitable. And each one of those I did. Chartered accountant was top every single time, followed by maybe some type of engineering, or a pediatrician was also recommended. And really there was no looking back for me, once I did it. I think by nature I'm quite analytical. I do like to analyze things. I do like to look at numbers and analyze. And so it was a really good fit. And I think dovetails really nicely with the finance and investment world, which is very much a passion of mine. When, if I'm reading a book, it's usually something related to finance and investments.
Okay. So going to PwC was a no-brainer then. It had to happen. You had to go to the Big Four. Did you get picked out of CA or did you apply for it? How did that happen?
So all the big four firms come to university from your first year, and they sort of demonstrate, their firm and the capabilities and explain a bit. And I was quite drawn to PwC from the beginning. And initially, I signed with the Port Elizabeth office. But then as my studies progressed, I just felt like it was maybe time for me to be exposed to something new, to something different. And I felt a draw to Cape Town. And so I engaged with the Cape Town office. And I mean, they were very receptive and very welcoming. And that's sort of how the journey went. I had a wonderful experience with Pricewaterhouse, both in audit, and then after I qualified, switching over to corporate finance. So in total, I spent around 5 years there, and I really had a wonderful experience.
Okay. And I want to know that while at PwC, did you get to travel the world away from South Africa? Is that how you also got into working with the World Food Program? I want to ask you about, from that question, I want to move to a question that's very odd. We all think of World Food Program, United Nations and all that. What's the role of the finance officer in the World Food Program?
Yeah.
So that's
it's quite a segue, isn't it? Like it's quite a step change from the audit sort of world financial corporate sector into the non-profit. It's a very big pivot, So after a few years in corporate finance with PwC, it was always South Africa bound. I did travel, but it was all maybe to Johannesburg or, to Stellenbosch or something like that. So it was always within South Africa. But I had from quite a young, like early stage in my career, I had this sense that I would love to have some experience overseas. And so initially for me, that was looking at the big finance hubs, looking at London, looking at New York, looking at Hong Kong, and I was busy exploring options in these cities. And frankly, I think for a lot of chartered accountants, we're a bit unaware of what is happening in the humanitarian space and what type of career could be built in that space. And so my now wife, we met in Cape Town, and she had the opportunity to come over to Rome and join the World Food Program. And at that point, I was, intrigued by this, and I started learning more about what the World Food Program does. And, I really was hooked, to be honest, because the World Food Program is one part of the United Nations. And so it's a specialized agency focused on ending world hunger, fighting starvation. There's around 800 million people in the world that are food insecure. They don't know when their next meal is coming from. And so to bring your work in to somehow support towards that mission, I think is really powerful. You can form a really strong connection around that mandate. So how does an accountant fit into this picture? Well, it doesn't matter if you're doing mining or banking or nonprofit, somehow there are books, somehow there is money and banking and these types of elements involved. And that's where the chartered accountant skill set becomes really powerful. And so, for example, for the World Food Program, I'm in the treasury team, and it's quite a centralized function. And so we have all of our global banking accounts, all the cash management activities, sending money to all the various countries we operate in, doing FX trading, dealing with investment portfolios, all of that is centralized in our team. And so I think the chartered accountant skill set becomes very useful.
You've been here, what, 4 years now. 4 years. It's been 4 years.
6 years.
6 years now, and each year you've grown from position to position. And the system here is very different from the corporate world. How does that work?
So initially, when I came over, it was really as a consultant, and on a very short-term contract. It was just 3 months. So I was packing my bags and immigrating from South Africa to Italy based on a 3-month employment contract. And bizarrely, within the first few weeks, my appendix burst, and I was hospitalized for another week and a half. And so essentially, my first almost half of my contract was a bit of a disaster when I joined. But subsequently, the opportunities just opened up, and I was able to prove myself, and sort of these consultancies were extended, and then later I had the opportunity to become a more permanent staff member. And here, it kind of takes you to a different level where you have more leadership responsibilities. You can supervise people, you're leading recruitment initiatives, you just increasingly have more roles and responsibility within the team. And that's sort of been my journey so far.
That's wonderful. For me, there's a lot to think and take from you here, right? You literally go to Rome from South Africa, which is where the World Food Program is based. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where the headquarters is, right?
That's correct, yes.
How do you manage these cultural shifts that happen as a leader?
No, thanks, Vishal. So you're right, the team is global. In fact, at our headquarters, I probably estimate that more than half of the staff are not Italian. It's very, very global, very mixed. Just in my team of a dozen, we have a South African, we've got someone from Hong Kong, El Salvador, Philippines, some Italians. It's a real mix, someone from Turkey. And so I think there's strength in diversity. There's a lot of strength in these various cultures, ways of working, ways of thinking. And if everybody feels comfortable to share that, you can, I think, come up with better solutions and actually form a really strong bond. And it's also just anecdotally, it's really enriching. We'll have a team coffee together, and somebody will share a story of, their country or their experience. And it really opens your mind and understanding them better and understanding people better. And so I've really enjoyed this element, and I think what also helps is people that work for World Food Program, they really engage with the work. We're very much aligned with the work that we're doing and the mission that we're trying to achieve. And that helps also, with when you have the sense of alignment, there's less friction, there's less issues or barriers to overcome because we're all facing the same direction.
World where, opportunities are being taken by technology, but like you said, you have to embrace it. People also see a lot of gigging happening. There aren't permanent jobs anymore. So many challenges to grapple with. What would you recommend younger people?
Vishal, something that I've realized is that so much of it is about your attitude. So much of it is driven by how you approach a situation. The situation might be out of your control. You can't control what's going to happen with technological advancements, what AI is going to do. You can't control these various aspects, but you can control how you approach it, how you respond to it, the decisions you make as a result of it. And this is something that I found really, really powerful. What I would suggest to young people is to embrace the change, is to really immerse yourself in the things that interest you. If you're really, for me, I was really interested in properties and investments and stocks and all these things. So I would read a ton of books on it and listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos and really inform myself, because it means that you're really well informed. And when it comes to the value you can add to a conversation or the contribution you can make, immediately it's amplified, and you can speak from a place of confidence, and this will position you really well going forward. So I would really, encourage young people to embrace that. How can I add value? How can I contribute? How can I have impact in something that resonates strongly with me and that I'm happy to pursue, on a deeper level?
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Gareth Meaker, and thank you for watching The Finance Story. Gareth, it's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure has been mine. Thank you, Vishal. Thanks for having me.